Figure 5, a table showing gross national income and infant mortality for a number of South American countries. So, gross national income, that's basically the money and the value of everything that you've made in your country in a year, plus all the profits from your companies worldwide. So it's just a way of measuring how much money basically your country has. Infant mortality, that is the number of babies that die before they turn 1. So you've got all of the data in this figure, and then below it you've got a graph. This is called a scatter graph that basically plots the relationship between two sets of figures, in this case GNI and infant mortality. Now your first question is to name the country at point A on the scatter graph. So if we have a look up, so A points to this one here. This is where the X is. So if we look across, infant mortality in country A is 30, and then if we read down, their gross national income is around about 3,700, 3,800. So let's see if that country exists. Infant mortality 30, gross national income for this country 3,750. So the answer today is Guyana. 2.2. Complete the scatter graph by plotting the data for Uruguay. Now, Uruguay has a GNI of 15,180 and infant mortality of 10. So, gross national income 15,000, just past the line 180. We'll go up until we get to infant mortality of 10, and then we'll put across somewhere where the cursor is in the moment. 2.3. Draw a line of best fit on the scatter graph to show the relationship between GNI and infant mortality. So think back to maths. The line of best fit is not a dot to dot. We are not joining up all these points. What it is basically a rough estimate line of the pattern. So as long as you have sort of an equal split of points just above it and just below that line, that's fine. So we have to draw a line roughly going from top to bottom, left to right, going down in this sort of angle here, with a few points above and a few points below. Question 2.4. Suggest one reason for the relationship between GNI and infant mortality shown on the scatter graph. As we've seen already, there is a negative correlation here, which means as one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. In this case, the more money you have, the less babies that die. All you've got to do is just give a reason for that. So, all the cliches we have to pick out here. First of all, if you have more money, then you've probably got the opportunity to buy better food, so the diet would be better, so children will be healthier and not die. You could link it to healthcare. There are more doctor surgeries, there is better medicine, there is a better quality hospital. You might link it to the quality of where they live. There might be, in a rich country, better sanitation, more running water. Any of these points, as long as you briefly state one, then explain it, that should be enough for full marks. Question 2.5. Using the data in figure 5, calculate the average infant mortality rate for the 12 countries shown. Show you're working in the space below. To calculate the average, all you've got to do is you've got to add up all of this data here, and then you've got to divide by how many countries there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So add all that up, divide by 12, and your answer should be 16.75. Next question, 2.6. Suggest 2 ways that the level of economic development of a country might affect the quality of life of its people. Personally, I don't know the difference really between this question and 2.4. It seems almost identical. But again, let's think logically. If you have more money, what can you do with it? How can it improve the quality of your life? So more money, you've got a wider provision of medical services, you've got better access to education, Therefore, literacy rates in your country will go up. More people will be able to read and write. You've got improved infrastructure, roads, pipes, internet maybe, less diseases because you'll have probably more fresh water, you'll have sewage disposal, things like that. As long as you explain 2 points using phrases like maybe which means that, that should be enough for all the marks here. Question 2.7, describe the changes to the industrial structure shown in figure 7. So figure 7, we've got a couple of pie charts which show the types of jobs people had in 1961 and 2011. All we're doing here is to describe the changes. Don't need to explain them just yet, but we want 2 separate points, 2 marks. So for instance, we can have a look at these pie charts. We can say that in 2011, there was over 75%. I know there's no numbers on the pie chart, but you can see by the section, over 75% of people work in the service industry, which obviously is a lot more than it was in 1961. You can also say that a lot fewer people work in the manufacturing sector in 2011 compared to 1961. So as long as you come up with different points, a couple of different points, that should be fine. The next question suggests reasons for the changes shown in figure 7. So here's where we have to explain. So it's 4 marks. Now, we need to make sure we're in paper 2 because a lot of your answers can sometimes be quite vague. So try and think about if there's any key terms you can use to explain the changes. So for instance, you could say less people now work in agriculture, so farming or fishing, compared to 1961. A key term for this would be the mechanisation of primary jobs. So basically, less people need to work in the fields because there's technology and machinery that does the job for them. Another key term would be deindustrialisation. So basically, we used to manufacture a lot of things and now we don't, because all those manufacturing jobs have gone to cheaper places abroad. You could say due to the growth of technology, things like mobile phones, computers, things like that, there now is a growth in, I guess that's what the other jobs will be, the quaternary jobs. You could say because we have increased wealth and income, there's an increased need for services as well, such as retail or banking, things like that. Using figure 8 to help you explain how modern industrial developments can be made more environmentally sustainable. So, key thing here, we've got to link our points to environmental sustainability. In other words, what is going to be good for nature now and in the future? So, link it to nature rather than saving money in the future or making people happy or making people's lives better. So, we've got to use figure 8. So let's have a look. Okay, I've got a photograph. Doesn't really say too much information. You just got a building where people obviously go to work. So how is this development, how is this building good for the environment? Well, straight away we can see that there's loads of grassy areas and lots of trees. So you could say the trees being planted, they'll obviously take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, so the local air quality will be improved. You can also say that the grassy areas can create habitats for local wildlife and improve maybe the local ecosystem. You might notice that there's quite a lot of, it looks like glass panels on the front here, and then we've got 3 sort of domes on the top, which I believe must be there to allow sort of light to enter the building. So if the light does that, it will heat the building up naturally, therefore there's less need to produce any electricity to heat the building. And you can link that point into the fact that we are burning less fossil fuels, therefore we won't enhance the greenhouse effect or linked to obviously global warming. You can also see as well, just in the foreground here, that there seems to be lots and lots of paths. Now, these paths will encourage pedestrians, walkers, or could be cyclists as well. Now, rather than linking that into sort of a healthy lifestyle, we've got to link that into the environment. So we could say if there are more paths, this will mean that more people will walk to work or cycle to work. Therefore, there'll be less need to use cars or public transport. Therefore, linking the idea that if there is less cars on the road, there is less fossil fuels being burned. Therefore, it's not going to impact on global warming. Also in here, our case study we could use would be the Cambridge Science Park, where they use things like local materials for the buildings, or there's energy efficient light bulbs inside. So potentially you could use some of those specific facts to help you in this question, but you do have to make sure for the majority of your answer you are using figure 8. Evaluate the effectiveness of tourism in reducing the development gap. Use figure 9 and your own knowledge. So it's another 9-mark question, so 10 minutes worth of writing. First of all, the development gap. This is just what we call the difference between really developed and rich countries on one side and then really poor and underdeveloped countries on the other. So there is a gap there. So is attracting lots of tourists a good way to reduce or close the gap? Basically, does it make poor countries and developing countries, does it help them? Does it give them more money? So what we've got to do is evaluate the effectiveness. Basically, this question is saying, how good is tourism? Is it 100% perfect? Are there loads and loads of advantages? Is it actually really, really bad? Or hopefully, a lot of your answers will be somewhere in the middle. So we've got to use figure 9. So if I go up, what have we got then? Well, we've got a graph which shows us the amount of tourists that have entered the country of Botswana and the amount of money they've given the country. So remember, if there is a graph, reference some of the numbers. You can clearly see that the amount of people in Botswana has increased over the years. So has the money that the country has seen. We've also got a photograph and lots of quotes. Again, you can quote some of these. Say, tourism, one of the fastest growing parts of the economy. Tourism brings money into local communities, and try and develop these points on. You've also got to use your own knowledge. Now, our example is Tunisia, for a country that is trying to improve and get better by attracting tourists. Now, in terms of Tunisia, there are some positives. Tourism does provide jobs. In Tunisia, it's around about 400,000 people work in the tourism industry. Now, it's not just those that are directly involved, but there's a key term called the multiplier effect. This is basically the idea that if tourists or anyone goes to an area, it's not just the people that own the hotels that make the money, but what about the companies that supply the hotels with food? What about the people that work in the transport sector, so taxis and buses that take tourists from A to B? What about the people that work in the local markets? When the tourists come, they'll spend money there. So basically, the wealth is being multiplied. Loads of people are getting wealthy, which is happening in Botswana, but also in Tunisia. You could also say that obviously if a country has more money, it can then improve its country on roads, on railway lines, on better sanitation. So there's all those things that you can explain. However, to evaluate the effectiveness, we've got to have a bit of balance. And yes, okay, tourism is good, but in the context of Tunisia, well, we can say that a lot of Tunisia's beaches have been polluted by litter. There's been a lot of untreated sewage that's been pumped out from the hotels into the sea. You've got a lot of big global companies that run the airlines that actually take the money out of the country. That money is never seen in places like Tunisia and Botswana. So if you've got big holiday firms, they're going to keep the profits. That's not really going to benefit the country. Or specifically, I guess, to Tunisia, you can talk about the terrorist attacks that we've talked about in lesson and say, well, yes, tourism is great. It gives all the jobs, lots of money, lots of people are getting rich, but there's all these negatives as well. So to get at least 7 out of 9, you do really have to evaluate and come to your own personal conclusion based on a balanced answer.